Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 286th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And here we are at the celebration episode for 6 years of the podcast. And don't forget, the podcast has been fortnightly over the last year. But if you're missing weekly content, you have 5 years worth of episodes to reflect back on. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at bit.ly/DMPG23. So as I said, we are 6 years into podcasting of the Diverse Minds podcast and 286 episodes with a few changes after 5 years. Of course, you will know that this year, due to fortnightly episodes, the number, of course, of the podcast has halved. And hopefully you found they've been quite quick and punchy episodes to help listeners take action easily. And don't forget, if you missed any episodes, you can also check out YouTube. All of my podcasts are listed on YouTube. They are audio only. So if you're hoping for video, sorry, no luck there. But you can also check out all the episodes there. And that's at Diverse Minds Podcast UK. So in this episode, I wanted to share with you a recap from the last year's worth of episodes and also provide an update. So you'll know that in 2021, after about a year and a half of podcasting, I decided that there needed to be some themes. So the themes that we cover in the show are race, equity, mental health, Black, global majority, women of colour, and to share my own personal journey. And as per last year, I created mini-series around each theme. So each month has a topic. And this year we've covered the following topics. So September was all about the race riots and also conflict in the workplace. Those are episodes 261 and 262. October was all about challenging dominant narratives and the white gaze, episodes 263 to 265. November was about gatekeeping in the workplace. And actually that one's been really popular, the episode about how to handle gatekeepers in the workplace, which is good, but also worrying because clearly it's happening a lot. And that was episodes 266 to 267. December was about how well-being enables inclusion and a review of the year. So my personal year. So episodes 268 and 269. January was about well-being trends and positive well-being culture, episodes 270 to 271. February was about models in the workplace. So we looked at liberation model versus policy model and the wheel of power, episodes 272 to 273. March was, of course, International Women's Month, and the theme this year was accelerate action. And I looked at women's mental load, episodes 274 to 276, which then overlapped with April. April is, of course, Stress Awareness Month. So we had Stress of the Patriarchy, which overlaps with International Women's Month. So that was episode 276 as well. So it kind of crosses both months. And also the stress of forms. And please do not aspire for your workplace to be like a family. So episodes 277 and 278. May was all about Mental Health Awareness Week, communities in mental health, episodes 279 to 280. June's theme was about loneliness, and those were episodes 281 and 282, particularly as it links to mental health and being the only lone voice in the workplace. July was about human diversity and biodiversity as a warm-up for South Asian Heritage Month, so that was episode 283. And of course, July and August, we have South Asian Heritage Month, Roots to Roots, episodes 284 to 285. To date, the downloads have been 56,211 for a non-celebrity podcast. I think that is pretty good. Of course, I'd love them to be higher, but this podcast is quite niche in a way, and for people that really care about this subject matter. So all-time episodes to date, the most popular, we've got at number 10, Work-Life Balance. Number 1, Teacup Energy Drainers. Episode 109, 8 Ways to Create Culturally Inclusive Meetings. That's always really popular. Episode 110, Tackling Anti-Blackness in South Asian Communities, something we have a lot of work to do. And that was for South Asian Heritage Month a few years back. Episode 8, What is Diwali and How It's Celebrated, with Dr. Manish Dayal. Really popular. People love that episode. Episode 108, What's the Big Deal with Cultural Appropriation? Again, see that pretty much all the time in each week in the news or somewhere. Or in fact, I got sent a scarf that is a very expensive scarf, actually, with Indian block print, screen print. And I just by someone who is not South Asian. And I just thought, why on earth would you send this to me? It's like a scrap of fabric. It's like a piece of bunting. So yeah, really interesting. It happens all the time to many of us. Episode 111 with the brilliant Nina Kuiper's Black Women in Menopause. Episode 107, book review of The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. And then Diverse Minds podcast, the trailer. Episode 37, Why Bother with Inclusive Language? And then the number one spot, and I'm sure it features on some kind of course somewhere as reading as a pre-course material. I don't know. I can't find the resource for it, but it's episode 39, Resilience and Mental Health. So again, the top sort of 5 don't really change much. And then the bottom 5 kind of switch and swatch, but that's where we are as of recording this. Other podcasts I've been on this year is Billy Gyandulis, Once a Week with Billy G, The Workplace is Broken and Here's How We Fix It. The Association for Coaching, hosted by the brilliant Maxine Bell, and that was the day in the life of, and my episode was about culture and mental health. Andrew Talon's Confession of a Successful Leader podcast, and it was episode 53 about redefining success. So not loads, but different angles and quite different to my podcast. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of my show. And if you want to keep up to date, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive a free copy of my white paper on inclusive language and mental health at work. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. So remember, I started the podcast for people, organizations who couldn't afford to purchase training, or if you don't have control over the purse strings in your organization, it's about providing tools, tips, and support so that anyone can have access to it, and also get a flavor for my stance and the way that I work. So what's next for the podcast? Well, my podcast producer, Zavi, and I always have an end of year review. We have a really long conversation. We go through the episodes, we look, what landed well. We also talk about what I thought would land well and doesn't really. So interestingly, this year, the episodes on data were really popular, particularly on Instagram. Really interesting about sharing data. What does data mean? I wouldn't have expected that. And then other episodes that I think are going to people are going to love, they don't really love. But I also have a good chat with my friend and key champion, Dr. Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey, who always says to me, Layla, you just can't stop. There's a small group of us who have long-running equity, diversity and inclusion, or DEI podcasts in the UK, if not the predominantly English speaking space in the world, which always blows my mind because in the grand scheme of things, 6 years isn't really that long. But it's interesting, this phenomenon called pod fade, which is where people start podcasts and they fade quite quickly. You do have to really keep going at it. And for me, it's always, I prefer the podcast to writing blogs. But given thinking about the future then of the podcast, given there isn't a week that goes by without some equity, diversity, inclusion topic in the news, and I have to say, sadly, at the moment, it's not very positive. And I've seen many trans colleagues and friends feel very scared for themselves, for their own safety, for the way they're being spoken to with the clarification by the Supreme Court on the Equality Act. So the guidance will be coming out soon. Now, I'm also really clear that I'm not an expert on everything. So I'm going to be drawing on articles, research, and people's lived experience to do this, if I feel qualified to talk about a subject. But I do think that there's a lot going on that we could look at in the news space and extrapolate it and think about, well, how is this going to relate to the workplace? So it will still be about relating it to the workplace. It's not just going to be an opinion show, but more around what's been happening. This is interesting. How could we think about it in the workplace at an individual, team and organizational level? And I'll also be giving some examples of what I've seen working in different workplaces to ensure positive conversation, equity and fair environments. So I hope you're as excited as I am for the next year ahead. It's always interesting and it's always good to take stock and reflect and look at what's gone well. And so I'd like to say again, huge thank you as always to everyone who has listened, because of course, without listeners, I wouldn't have a podcast, people that share, people who send me messages. As I always say, it'd be great to have 10,000 downloads a week, as much as I would love to have that, but engaged followers who will and can make a difference is absolutely vital. It's been great meeting and connecting with you all over the last 6 years, and I've enjoyed focusing on my solo episodes. I hope you've enjoyed the punchy. You are missing guests, and I know quite a few people have reached out to me and said, can I be a guest on your podcast? And I'm very sorry I've had to turn around and say no. It's due to a capacity issue as well. Actually, having guests on the show is quite a lot of extra work, in a good way, but I just did not have the capacity for it in the last 12 months. And also many guests don't come with the right gear, or they're sort of in places where there's lots of noise, and you really do have to make time and make sure that you have everything in place. So I think many people like the idea of coming on a podcast. There's actually a lot of work that you have to do behind the scenes for yourself in order to make sure it's as positive as it can be. As I said, if you're unsure about working with me, my podcasts are a really good way to get to know me and decide if my approach is right for you. And please do spread the word and share with anyone you think would like to listen or would find the content useful. And I know that creating the environment in the workplace, especially at the moment, that is positive, that is equitable, that's fair, is not necessarily easy, but it's really beneficial for individual employees and because it boosts morale, engagement, and retention across an organization. So if you are ready to take the next step, you've listened to the podcast, you've got as much information as you can, then of course I'm here to support you. Please reach out to explore training, consultancy, and coaching services designed to build healthy, resilient, and equal workplaces. So you could get in touch with me at Leyla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. And of course, I really hope you've enjoyed the show today and over the last 6 years. So if you have, please leave me a review on Apple, or Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast from. And as always, I'd love to hear from you as listeners. And you can leave me an anonymous, or you can tell me your name on SpeakPipe, a voice note at bit.ly/SPKPDMP. And don't forget my TEDx talk as well about the relationship between culture, race, and mental health in the workplace. It's just 12 minutes long, and you can catch it at bit.ly/TEDxWolves, WOLVESLO. And if you did like it, please share on YouTube, leave a positive comment, share and like. And yes, of course, the resources are there for you, all the episodes I've mentioned. I really look forward to stay with me on my journey over the next year, looking at how we can explore current affairs, current issues, and how they relate to the workplace, and what we can do to continue to create a positive and equitable environment for all. So until then, everyone, take care. It's been a joy as always, and I look forward to the next year ahead. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.